All right, I just want to direct you guys to Emergency Awesome's channel. He did a video on Suicide Squad, Harley Quinn, and the Joker versus Batman spinoff movie, which will be awesome, I think. And for the most part, I really enjoy his movies. He's very impartial. He breaks down how movies are made, and I'm really happy about that. Now, I just want to correct something though that he said. He said Batman is trying to assemble the Justice League, and if you've watched any version of Batman, the Bat computer has files in tracks on almost everybody that Batman has ever investigated. And as a result of that, he was saying that a lot of people thought that it was weird that in the post-credit scene for Suicide Squad, Batman had to get information from Amanda Waller. Everyone's like, one man should have already gotten that information. That is through his own means, seeing also that he got information from Lex Luthor, right? And he's saying that they probably just wanted to throw forward to Justice League for people who don't look into that detail so deeply. And he went on to say that if you read the comics, you know, where it's proposed that Batman is the world's greatest detective, you would think, at least in his opinion, that he hasn't done a lot of detective work in this movie so far or in BVS, and he thinks that Jeff Johns being on board would be able to see those little details and oversee that stuff in the characters. Um, Having said that, I did leave a response to his video, but I wanted to show you guys the insight. I think he's making mistakes there. He also says that, him having to rely on Amanda Waller for information, he shouldn't have to do that, seeing he got files from Lex Luthor, etc. Now, if I were to pretty much go into my response to that, I corrected him 3 different ways, and I'll just go to my response right here under the video so you guys can see. The first thing is that to say that Batman didn't do much detective work in BVS is severely wrong. And even in Suicide Squad, he did detective work, obviously. Otherwise, he would not have caught the criminals. He wouldn't have been able to catch the Joker and Harley Quinn. Of course, with Deadshot, Amanda Waller gave him the intel, but then if he wasn't available to get the intel, he would know, right? Anyway, the point is, Batman has done substantial detective work in BVS in trying to track down the kryptonite throughout the movie. In fact, he started off interrogating a gentleman who was a sex trafficker. He then went on to keep on looking, nothing really showing up in terms of activities on the city. Then he got a lead with KGB Beast, as he's known, and from there he was able to track his phone and track the phone calls he was making to Lex Luthor. That led him to Lex Luthor, and that was able to hack into Lex Luthor's mainframe, get information from Lex Luthor, and from there he was able to find the kryptonite he was looking for. He knew that Lex Luthor was doing research on kryptonite. He knew all of these things. So Batman, obviously, he did detective work. It wasn't that he wasn't doing detective work, and people praised this Batman for being the best all-around Batman because he was just so good at detective work. However, if you know anything about Death in the Family, you know that Batman in BVS was one-track mind. He was bent on revenge, and this is pretty much the same way as it was in Death in the Family, where he was trying to find the Joker and kill him. Batman became excessively brutal. He was losing his focus and becoming just a despot. The only thing he was focused on was killing the Joker, pretty much, right? The second point I wanted to make was that, yes, Batman needed as much information as he could get. While some people feel that his mainframe computer would be able to access documents and files from the government, he still would not have been able to get the files that Waller had. Waller, as you notice, had her files in a briefcase. She had it in a sort of dossier form. and she probably held her information that was not on some mainframe. So you were not going to get Waller's information other than from Waller. So he was working with Waller. He had connections with Waller. They did a barter agreement. Waller was dealing with metahumans, so he wanted some more information. And remember, he's not just gathering information on the Justice League, but he's also gathering information on unrelated metahumans. So that's another big point. And I mean, if you can get information everywhere, why not go get it? So that's what Batman does. He gets information. So it's kind of, for somebody to think that he has this master mainframe computer that can download anything from anywhere. If that was the case in BVS, he wouldn't be cloning KGB's phone to get his phone calls on what information he has. And he used a lot of gadgets in BVS. The movie didn't highlight his gadgets, but he used a lot of gadgets in BVS, all right, to move the story along. And then the third point was that, of course, this is very similar to the comics and animated series. The guy was making it sound like the comics and the animated series and the video games weren't like this movie. It's very similar. In fact, Amanda Waller knew who Batman was not only in the animated series, but in Suicide Squad comics, when Batman broke into Belle Reve prison to access information Amanda Waller had. Why did he have to break into Belle Reve prison? If he had a big master mainframe computer, he should be able to know that, right? So it doesn't make sense. The logic that some of these people are saying, and even this guy is trying to propose that Jeff Johns needs to correct that, when in fact that's not the case here. Jeff Johns doesn't need to correct that. So I just wanted to make this video. If Emergency Awesome sees this, good. I mean, you need to correct yourself. Sometimes you have to be as correct as you possibly can be when you're making these videos. Don't just go with public sentiment. Don't just go with what people say. If you're truly a comic book fan, if you truly look into the comics, you would know what issue of Suicide Squad this movie actually pulled the Amanda Waller line from, what issue of Justice League Unlimited it's actually pulled from, where Amanda Waller knows that Bruce Wayne is what he is. And by the way, if you've read the comics or if you have watched Justice League Unlimited, you know Batman and Amanda Waller's relationship is sort of interesting in that they still work with one another to some degree, even though Amanda Waller has got really much more sketchy moral principles. She's more like a Lex Luthor character. And Batman really wants to shut down the Suicide Squad. That's what he really wants to do. And yet he still helps Amanda Waller. It's a very complicated relationship. They still talk with one another. And Amanda Waller, she actually trusts Batman of all the members of the Justice League more than anybody else. And she talks and she works with him. And still at the same time, if needs be, she will stop him and the Justice League if anything goes south for any reason. And in fact, she on occasion has tried to stop the Justice League and Batman and everybody, literally using the people she has. So, and we saw that a number of times. Actually, we've seen that in Justice League's Task Force X movie, which was the first animated Task Force X movie and their first animated mission. So, I mean, if you don't understand those dynamics, and this is what is being brought to the big screen, I mean, this is probably, like I said, the DCU is probably the first time you're going to see really comic book accurate characters on the screen. And I just think that Emergency Awesome's got it wrong when it comes to those few minor points. They're minor points to the video because the video really does have a lot to offer in terms of what he's saying with Harley Quinn and Joker story. He's speculating, but it's still fun where he's talking about certain things, and a lot of stuff he says is really good. So I just wanted to correct those three major points that he made, which I thought were off the mark. But other than that, I think his video is really cool. You guys have a great one. Oh, by the way, subscribe to Emergency Awesome. He has some great breakdowns, not just of DCEU movies, but generally movies in general, especially comic book movies. And he's a really good comic book fan. I really like what he's doing. I support him 100%. You guys have a great one.